Welcome to Group Talk, 4 shows, 1 podcast from the Small Group Network focusing on topics relevant to small group ministries. Whether you're in a church of 100 or 10,000, whether you're a volunteer or staff, we want to support, encourage, and equip you to lead well. So relax, listen, and enjoy Group Talk United.
Greetings to all of you small group point people worldwide, and welcome to our second installment of the Group Talk United podcast. Derek here along with all of our other Group Talk personalities. We've got Steve Gladen of Inside Saddleback.
Hey, everybody.
We've got Carolyn Taketa of Here to There.
Hey, everyone.
We've got Bill Search of The Leadership Journey.
Awesome to be with you.
We've got Nick Lindsay of The Reading Lens.
Hi, friends.
And we've got the man who brings it all together with a beautiful bow, our producer, who's also co-hosting with me today, Jason Banzoff.
Hey, how you doing?
I am doing great. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for this amazing second installment of Group Talk United. Jason, take it from here.
Yeah, just a reminder to those that are listening that we are spread out all over the country as we record this show remotely. Some of us are on the East Coast, some of us are on the Midwest, and a few of us are on the West Coast, and some of us have palm trees, some of us don't. So, we'll let you figure out who that is. And so it's been 3 months since our first Group Talk United show, and we've unveiled 4 new shows, and it's been amazing to hear each one of the shows take off since then. I've enjoyed actually producing each and every one and getting so much out of it as I'm producing. Now, before we get into the meat and of the show, we have some very exciting announcements to make. We have released a brand new online training course called How to Start and Sustain Healthy Online Small Groups, and it features 7 total video sessions taught by Saddleback Church Online Pastor Jay Cranda, downloadable notes, and lesson discussion questions. And so, Steve, can you share with our listeners real quick your heart behind creating this course?
Yeah, and actually, I didn't create it. Jay Cranda did, who's been our online pastor since 2009. And just a brilliant, when you watch the show, when you watch this course, you're going to discover that Jay looks like a kid, but, Jay's like in his mid-30s, almost 40. And but he's been doing online groups, probably one of the best experts around. I took the whole course myself, just love it. It's going to get good practical stuff. And if every church isn't doing it, man, I would just really encourage them to jump in and see just how this course is played out. There's an introduction piece that will outline the course, but it really is the how-tos to, at the end of that course, you're going to be able to have online small groups up and running.
Well, very cool. Hey, thank you for sharing that, Steve. You can learn more by watching the free course introduction and enroll at smallgroupnetwork.com/online small groups. Again, that's smallgroupnetwork.com/online small groups.
I am so pumped about this course, and I'm pumped about this show. Today, guys, we're talking to all of you listeners about leadership wisdom you need going into the final stretch of 2020. I think it would be the understatement of the century to say that 2020 has been quite the year. In fact, someone posted a meme in our Facebook group, our Small Group Network Facebook group, that cracked Steve and I up. It's a picture of Marty McFly from Back to the Future with the crazy Doc Brown. And the caption is, Marty, whatever you do, don't go to the year 2020.
Sounds about right.
Amen.
I don't think any of us have the words, in all seriousness, to begin to describe what we've all experienced the last 6+ months, right? We've been stretched to the max mentally, emotionally, physically, not just as humans, but as citizens, as ministry leaders, as small group point people. And so Jason and I's first question for you titans of small group ministry, we'll start with you, Steve, is what area of your leadership would you like to see strengthened as 2020 comes to a close?
A good question. I think a couple words come to my mind. One of them is compassion. The other one is clarity. I handle a lot of the people who may be upset at Saddleback. I love customer service, so I can't tell you how many coffees and how many lunches I have had, social distance, of course. that have been people that have been pleased to share with me their opinions and their impatience with how we may be leading our church. And those of you that are listening, you're always going to have 10% of the people that hate you, 10% that love you, 80% that are along for the ride and all that. So you can't get weighed down by that. But I find with every coffee, my compassion gets a little less. And I'm almost saying, hey, let's just cut the small talk and let's just jump right into it. And and this is the way we're going to play. But so compassion is one of those that is forefront. I really, before I sit down, and also I can find that during the season of 2020, my fuse is a little bit shorter. And so I've got to breathe a little bit more. I've got to just expand and just build in that compassion that can just be more Christ-like. And so I got to get my head in the game on every conversation I'm having, especially when I'm on this call. I'm looking at these people. I'm just ready to rage on you, but no, I'm not. But we'll just, the compassion, then clarity. I think one of the things that helped us so much with our small groups and as a church as a whole also was the clarity. And we just came out of the gate and said, hey, as we shut down the church, this was back in the first week of March, as we shut it down from what you're used to as a gathering center, and we turned it into a mobilizing center, we are very clear on these are the 5 things we're doing, and we're not doing anything else. And that gave everybody such focus with what we were going to do. And so as we're closing out 2020, and we're now starting to expand some of our campuses in our particular geographical region, our campus is not open for the weekend, but we're still jamming on all the other concentric circles that we have at Saddleback. So just maintaining that focus so we just don't get scattered and just fly all around.
Yeah, I think, mine's similar in some ways too. The whole compassion piece, so relatable. Psalm 78, 72 talks about David's leadership. And this is a verse from probably 10 plus years ago. I think I first heard it from you, Steve, at a talk that you did eons ago. But it talked about how David led his people with a true heart and with skillful hands. And I find lately on a personal level that my heart isn't always in the right place. I'm weary. It's been 7 months, and we, in California, gosh, we got hit early, and we're going to probably be the last ones that are normalizing. So I think there's just a wariness that's kind of set in. I'm finding myself becoming more cynical as I have those coffees that you're talking about.
Wow.
Yeah, so
Carolyn.
Not that I'm prone towards that, but at all. But I think I've just been really convicted more that I need to watch my heart and make sure that I continue to lead with integrity and honesty. Like I've been telling people, yeah, this is a hard season, and that's okay. And some days it's okay if you just survive it. You don't have to thrive every single day all the time. I mean, that's not even realistic. There's seasons. So I think just to be honest about where I'm at, but at the same time leading forward in that and making sure I have the right heart. And then the skills side is, 2020 means you just can't dial anything in as we had before. Just came out of our fall series. Normally looks very different than how we did this year. I think going forward for the remaining 3 months, things are going to keep looking different. We just had a Christmas meeting. Christmas looks really different on our campus this year. We're going to do a drive-by, lights and all sorts of other things. We used to do a big snow hill, and there's just different things we're doing. And I think we have to constantly be mindful, to be skillful, to keep learning. I love the online resources that Small Group Network has, and Jay's stuff is great. But it's just constantly not just to give up just because we're just holding out for things to change, but rather really embracing the next normal of this next few months and continuing to press in and try stuff, even if it's messy, it's hard, it's experimental, whatever it is, and keep moving forward. That actually helps me on the energy side and on the heart side too.
Carolyn, be careful with it. Oh, sorry, Derek.
No, I was just going to say I loved your little line that you shared there. It's okay to just survive some days. You don't have to thrive every day. So good. Bill, what about you?
I was just going to say, Carolyn, you got to be careful of that term drive-by. The neighborhood I grew up in, that had a very, very different meaning. It wasn't a blessing, okay? But in your setting, I'm sure that you meant the blessing side of that. That's good.
Yes, the blessing is right. It's hard through. lights
Okay.
and
All right. All right. Later I'll explain to you what I meant by my neighborhood. No, one of the things that I've heard a lot of people talk about, so I'm not unique in this, but is that whole area of focus, and I don't mean what Steve was referring to as far as focus of the ministry. I mean, at a personal level, I found and have found, I shouldn't say it was in the past, it's still a current discipline where I have to sit down and just allow my mind to focus on something without distraction. And in the past, I already had a problem with that, but this has accelerated all of that. And so
That's a good point.
this has been a season where, as a leader, I've had to just set that time aside, and it really feels like it takes longer to accomplish that focus. If I'm trying to work my way through a problem or come up with a solution or work a team through an issue, everything is just taking longer because the brain is being pulled in so many different directions. And like I said, I'm not unique to that. I've heard many people talk about that as an issue. So that's just something that I'm having to cut myself some slack and realize this is a very traumatic year. It is what it is. And so rather than be frustrated, be thankful for the focus I can get, and then have the discipline. It means I have to schedule. I have to watch that schedule. I have to be careful with, there's this thing where I feel like every 5 minutes I have to go on CNN or Reuters or something and check what's happening. And I have to just resist that urge and go, you know what? Nothing's happening. Actually, it feels like every 5 minutes something is happening. But to get off that merry-go-round into focus. Yeah. So that's probably really for me the biggest thing that I'm working through this year. And I hope that actually some of the foundational stuff that I'm really focusing on now, I hope carries on. So in years to come, there's fruit from all of this.
Yep.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, I'm really glad for this question because I don't know that I would have asked it for myself. So I'm glad to hear this because it forces me to think of that. So, maybe part of mine is having someone hold me accountable and asking me this question so I can keep moving forward. But I think the best way to answer this question for me is I want to know where it's best to fail, knowing that I'm not going to be able to be the best at everything. I think that's inside my personality where I just want to be great at everything. And so I'm constantly trying to learn something new or add this to my, repertoire of, tool belt or whatever it may be. But at the end, that just leads me to burnout and being average at a lot. Right. And then this fall, my family, we're expecting a second child. And so I really don't want to get to the end of my life. And yeah, thank you. I don't want to get to the end of my life and, be known that I'm great at groups. I think that would be kind of a failure, being great at group director, but then being a subpar husband or father. And so I think I have a lot of area to work in that. And I think a lot of that's because it's easy to find my validation in what I do and where I work kind of thing, because I know what I'm supposed to do and I've been doing it for 11 years and you kind of have those kind of rhythms and know where to go to get that affirmation. But then at home, it can be really challenging to find that and get that. And so I think that this season is just one where it's just I need to recognize there's going to be things that drop at work and that's okay to fail at that. So if my boss is listening to that, I'm sorry. But hopefully, I'm sure he will understand that.
As long as you don't drop the ball with Small Group Network, that's all we care about.
There you go.
Drop it at your church all you want.
Small Group Network, family.
On our priorities.
Yeah. For those listening, you can see I was just showing Small Group Network at the very top and everything else very, very below. But yeah, so that's what I think I'm looking forward to, because I know, with the first child, I had to make that adjustment, right? Finding out holy crap, as a single person, I had a lot of free time, and then that's kind of gone. But to talk in the sports term, we're double teaming, right? And now we're going to man. So I realized that's going to switch up that time a little bit more as well. So.
You sure your wife's not
that's really
twins? Is she having twins? That'd be awesome if you have to go to a whole zone defense.
No, let's hope not.
Poor Nick. Yeah, those were all really, really good answers, and I really feel like we can all agree on this very thing, that as leaders and small group point people, we've been pushed to take our leadership to a whole new level since COVID happened. So our next question is going to be: is what are your leadership takeaways from COVID for your church and or small group ministry?
Yeah, so I think we could all agree online's here to stay. Engagement matters more than attendance. We need to be flexible, adaptable, etc. But I've been thinking. I heard we have a psychologist on our congregation who is so wise, and he recently said, when it comes to marriage, comes to ministry, comes to work or anything, sometimes when we're hit with the uncertainty, which is probably the name of the game with COVID, you go through these little tiers of perspective. So you start out condemning, then enduring, then tolerating, then accepting, and then finally embracing. And I just been really looking through that grid some to kind of go, yeah, where am I on this? Am I still resisting the lockdown? Am I still dying to go to restaurants indoors? Am I still resenting, the things we can't do? Or have I moved to accepting? And our small group leaders are similar. Some of them are still having to do online in our area. So, are they to help them move beyond just tolerating it and to really accepting and embracing the blessings in it? We have to change that perspective. And I think the leadership takeaway for this is because it's not business as usual. And for those of us who've been in ministry a long time, especially in our roles as small group point people, to kind of have fresh eyes and go, okay, how do we move from, condemning, tolerating to accepting? So here's an example. All the racial unrest and tension in our country, it's been so traumatic for so many people. And it's still kind of there in the midst of all the political stuff. I mean, it's just all swirling, right? So I feel like I went through this period of condemning it. Racism is bad, how to become anti-racist, and then kind of going, well, I can see, this and that about it. The situation is so complicated. And then kind of going, okay, we have this backdrop that's really painful for our country and for so many of our people. In fact, it should be painful for all of us because God hates injustice in any form. But then, okay, what difference can we make? Can our church make? Can our small group make? And so we're kind of diving in with, leading a Be the Bridge group, which is one of the books that our church is recommending. And so I'm actually leading one, and I haven't led a kind of church-wide small group. It's not really small, actually, so it turned out now it's become medium-sized. But just to kind of go, okay, I want to embrace this and go, instead of hating the noise and the pain and the trauma, embracing, go, okay, Jesus, what are you trying to teach us in this? And what can my 95% white church, what can we learn? And it's going to be messy. I'm kind of equal parts dreading and excited at the same time. So I think kind of moving through that and continuing to look at leadership challenges and look for the blessing in that space will help us kind of get through it.
That's so good. Carolyn, as you were going through those stages, it made me think, I have been thinking the pandemic through the stages of grief. And there are a lot of people in denial. That's one of the stages of grief. They're just straight up denying it, right? But it is a stage of grief because people have lost things. They've lost wedding ceremonies, they've lost graduation ceremonies, they've lost birthday parties and all these other things. And so it's loss. And some have actually, of course, there's been the loss of life, which is the most tragic of all. But because of that loss, people are moving through those stages of grief, which has really helped me understand different people are responding in different ways. So it allows me to, we talked earlier about extending compassion. It's allowed me to extend a little more grace and compassion because I know that people who are angry at me or at the end of something they found quite important in their lives, but we can't do it. I realize they're really angry, but it's not at me or it's not at the program. It is at really the loss. And this is a big year of loss. We're going through it as a nation. We're going through it as a world. We're going through stages of grief. And some people have gotten to acceptance a lot faster. You see it in bargaining. You see the whole, if you go through the stages of grief, you see that. So that's one piece. At the ministry leadership level, what this whole pandemic has revealed to me, at least, and I'm in Oklahoma, is you can't tell people what to do. Now, in California, where people have been nurtured and reared to be obedient to the governing authorities, that's different, okay? But I'm a Midwesterner, which is kind of right on I grew up in Michigan, which has, of course, been in the news for their various responses to this, and now I'm in Oklahoma. And so there is this sort of precious side to ministry in a culture, and I have to ask myself, do I want to represent the CDC? Do I want to represent even what to me would be considered a degree of common sense, or do I want to enable ministry to occur? And what happens when those two things run in conflict with each other? And I wish there was a policy, I wish there was a manual that would help us do that. And some of the more biblical people listening will be like, it's in the Bible. I'm like, well, I'd be open to what book of the Bible you'd refer me to, but it just is navigating through some tough stuff. So I have found that I have extended a lot of grace towards even churches that are responding differently than ours. We've been back open, partly because we're in Oklahoma. It hasn't hit us as hard as it has hit you guys. I mean, to put it in perspective, there's less people in Oklahoma than there are in LA County. So the entire state is smaller than Los Angeles County. So because of that, we're a unique context. So just navigating through how to do ministry from a contextual basis. So I've been reading a lot of, you guys know this, I've been reading a lot of Leslie Newbegin lately because he was a great missiologist, trying to find the missionary point of view in this complicated time.
Yeah, that's really good. John Tyson's been putting out some really good stuff around that as well. That's worth looking at. He's in New York City next to.
You're not talking chicken, right?
Yeah. I love his chicken.
John Tyson's chicken
tenders are the best.
I know. I was like going, I agree, man. Especially the spicy
I'm more
ones.
of a chicken patty guy, but you know,
anything in barbecue sauce is good.
Yeah, I think for me it's interesting. I mean, we get said every time, but like it just changes from month to month, and I think I would have been really confident in my answer a month ago because, man, we had as crazy as it sounds, we had a really good, strong from March until August, super, super strong. And then in the past kind of 6 weeks, we lost a lot of momentum and trying to find that again. But one thing that I found that's just been extremely important is, and this is going to sound anything bold or new, but purpose has been such a driving force of the groups that are succeeding and the ones that are not. And it was really great getting to hear. It was in the September's episode of Here to There, but Carolyn was talking with Jason Sniff and Courtney Davis, and they're talking about how it can't just be about community. You need more than that. They need to get outside of just themselves. And I think getting to watch that and experience that was really great through this season, and knowing that like this is something that's going to last outside of that. But then also like when I see our group's ministry versus others in the church, so the other kind of ministries, they kind of struggle through this. And I think it's because it was a little bit more of like, hey, we need you to help out here, as opposed to this is what your purpose will be in this area. And I think we've seen a lot of turnover when that does happen. Now, we've experienced that same turnover a little bit as well. But then on a personal level with purpose, like being in Hoboken, which is next to New York City, I just saw a stat. It's that the month of August, we had 287% increase in the number of people moving out from the past year. And so people are moving out in droves right now, naturally, needing more space in office, those kind of things, which makes sense. But it causes myself and my family to go like, wait, are we still supposed to be here? We have that same urge to get out and leave. But like, I really feel like kind of God has called us here, and this is like our purpose. And so just sort of driving that home has been, a nice takeaway from COVID for myself.
Yeah, I love small groups that with purpose, and no pun. No pun. Hey, I think I've got a few takeaways. One of them I learned is that life is greater when you're quarantined with somebody you love. So having that right someone to be quarantined with has made life so much sweeter and so much nicer and all that. But that's the fun one. But I think some of the ones that I have, and I'll get these quick to you, is that I one of the things I've learned is that people don't understand the nature of what the church is about. That it's not about an event. That nature of the church is about, everything Jesus talked to us about in the Great Commission and the Great Commandment, but yet we're so quick to grasp and say our event was taken away from us. And I'm all about temple courts. And I know this is a podcast on house to house, but we still we just not understanding what the church's mission is all about and its purpose is all about. So we'll leave that discussion for another day. Another one is I've learned that you get to know who's committed to you and who isn't. And
That's true.
Unfortunately, I've spent a little bit more time with people who aren't, and they're telling me why they aren't. But but it's an opportunity. You just find out. It's like when times are tough, you find out who is right there with you and who's ready to dig in and go the extra mile with you, and who was just still like going. Of all the questions you can ask in our county, it is people find a great question to ask.
Can I ask you how have you been recognizing them or acknowledging that along the way when you see those people who are with you?
Oh, I mean, Rick said it, Rick is bringing it from the weekend messages too. And he was just talking about, if you want happiness, what we have found that the most happiest people at Saddleback are the people that are in a small group and the people that are serving. If you're not doing those two things, you're generally not happy. And so it's just reaffirming, some of the things, that you don't get happiness from the cable news channel you watch. You get happiness from doing the Beatitudes. It's just, but Rick's been doing a great job walking through the practical aspects on the weekend message. And that's been the mouthpiece that we've had. So that's with that. I think, just another piece that's really not bummed me out, but I just realized how selfish and political this pandemic has turned us. And usually most disasters, whether it was the swine flu, whether it was 9/11 that we just went through in America, commemorating, generally disasters unite us. Mm-hmm. But this one has split us so far apart. And, on this, both sides are at fault. I mean, both sides are just so at fault on this. And that's why, we always know that the answer is never in politics. The answer is in pastoral ministry that changes the heart. But it's just been, I just noticed how it is, people have really seen, it goes to the other thing. They've seen church as a platform for a different cause than what Jesus has seen the church as a platform for.
So good. That was so good.
Great insight, guys. Yeah, thanks for sharing. We got one more question for you. And obviously here in the U.S., we have now entered the home stretch of a presidential election year, and it is getting crazier and crazier. And so our final question to each of you, and we'll start with you, Bill, is how are you leading your small group leaders in navigating the issue of politics as we enter the very heated and final stretch of a national election?
So easy. I just tell them who to vote for, and they're going to do it.
Yeah.
Because I don't know about you, but whenever I share my political opinion, everyone agrees with it and signs on. No, actually, actually.
Talked about earlier.
It is interesting because this isn't just a U.S. issue. In England, I interviewed on my last show Nick and Marjorie from Sheffield, England, and they were great. But they reminded me that Brexit is still an issue over there that draws fire regardless. There's very strong opinions on that. In fact, the churches might be even more divided about that issue than our churches are about politics. So, there's a couple things. This is always through leaders. When you're talking small groups, you're talking about developing and being available to talking with, coffee with, interactions with group leaders. And so here at our church, we also have adult Sunday schools, and a lot of our small groups emerge from that. So I have the privilege of interacting with those classes as well. But, I kind of carry with me a few messages in my back pocket. One is that Peter and Paul, both in their letters, say, pray for Caesar, don't pray to Caesar. So they were never looking to Caesar to solve their problems, but they did pray for Caesar. And American Christians for far too long probably have thought we need to pray almost to that president. And we need to pray for our political leaders, but we don't pray to them. In other words, we don't worship them. We are able to acknowledge the folly of that and the folly of really human leadership. It's imprecise and it's imperfect. And so I have this conversation with my college-age daughters who have very strong political opinions. I just say, hey, we're first and foremost followers of Christ. Political parties and labels, those don't stick very well to a Christian. At least they shouldn't. And so we ought to really be focused that way. And Steve, I saw that finger going up. Did you have something to add on that?
I was flipping you off.
We're recording this Zoom call. Yeah. Oh my heavens!
No, but I had a great quote. I have there's a great quote from Martin Luther that said, "The church must be reminded it's not the master or the servant of the government, but it is the conscience of the government." And it played this right into what you were saying there. I thought it was just a great quote.
Yeah, in some ways
that's
a great quote, because it's a great reminder that really that's the role we ought to play, a conscience in, back to Leslie Newbegin, my favorite old dead author. He talks about infiltrating the various organizations for the cause of Christ, thinking like missionaries. And far too often Christians align themselves with one party and one point of view, and then they cut off themselves from others. And so just thinking like a missionary. One more thing I'd just add to this before I punt this ball is I have been reminding people regularly that it's never appropriate for Christians to slander other people, that lying about people, misrepresenting people is actually one of the 10 commandments, and it's a violation of the commandment. And so I'm regularly copied into group emails and that are often of a political nature. And I almost always reply just to the leader, occasionally to everybody, with the Snopes reference or some other news article. But usually I direct it back to the author or the person who's forwarded it, and just I take it as a moment to remind them that as followers of Christ, we're called to do better. We're not called to engage. The world slanders. It's their hobby. It's their sport. And as Christians, we get caught up in that, but we're called to something very different.
It's beautiful. Beautiful.
Man, it's just like my show. I have to follow this. Unbelievable.
Come on.
When this question, politics makes me want to hang out in the corner in the fetal position and just ignore it all. But, and what's funny is that's kind of what our ground rules have been inside of our groups. So, we have this value of contribution, and in that we want everyone to contribute to the conversation or contribute to the group. And with that, the conversation. And one of the things we tell them in addition is that one of the best ways to contribute is what you don't contribute. So we ask that you hold back, talk about other denominations and or political parties and things like that. But given the season, I don't know that that's actually going to be wise to tell them to avoid this completely. Yeah. And I'm going to plug Carolyn's podcast again, the one with Jason Sniff and Courtney Davis, is that we're going to have to embrace these difficult conversations. With that, Jesus commanded us to love our neighbors as themselves. And so we're going to encourage the leaders this year to focus on members' experiences as opposed to just their political views. So by focusing on the why instead of the what, because we could talk about that what forever. I mean, that's what the 24-hour news networks are built on. It's just the what. But what are their personal experiences that led them to those kind of decisions? And rather than seeking to get to our point or get to our side, use it as an opportunity to hear how they get to those positions is what we're going to be encouraging our leaders to go with. I'm going to tell you that we might need a 3-month update because I have no idea how this is going to go. And I'm sure that this is going to result in, more work for our directors and our coaches and stuff like that for ones that don't go well. But, that's one of the beautiful things about the church is we get to be a part of that restoration as well. Yeah. So I'm just praying through this that that we get an opportunity to hear people's stories. One of my favorite quotes is from Fred Rogers, which is just that, frankly, there isn't anyone you couldn't learn to love once you've heard their story. And so I'm really hoping through this season, when they start hearing those comments, they can get to the why. So what leads you to believe that? What are your experiences? And hopefully they understand the person better and get to that point where it's like, okay, I don't agree with that, but I can see how you got there. I understand you better.
Yeah, because it's much easier to argue when you're talking about ideas and much harder to argue with someone's personal experience. And the why cares for people a lot more. We put together a 10 commandments of how to talk politics in small groups.
Oh.
And it's a lot of the similar stuff. It's, the posture of humility. You can learn from anyone, even someone with completely opposite political perspective. It's getting to the why, asking people their stories. And I'm reminded years ago, an older mentor, married couple told my husband and I, and actually I think he was kind of half serious, half joking, but he said, as a husband, you have to remember, do you want to be right or do you want to be married? And
why wasn't it framed the other way?
His wife was just nodding when he told this to Don, and Don was like, okay. And Don's also a lawyer, so it's kind of an interesting one. And we talked about it later, and I'm reminded of that with this politics conversation, because I think we have to decide, do we want to be right, or do we want to get their heart? Do we want to win the argument, or do we want to win the war of their heart? Especially when you're talking with non-believers. I mean, it's so crazy how we feel like on social media, you can actually convince someone, no, you're not, so get over it. Stop trying to win the argument, and instead think about, conduct yourselves in a manner worthy of the gospel. Be united together. Agree to disagree. It's okay to not win. And Dallas Willard has this beautiful spiritual discipline that he made up, and I love it. And he talks about having the spiritual discipline of not having the last word. And that's a hard thing for verbal processors like me, hard thing for argumentative people, or people who want to be right. And obviously we all believe in truth, because you can't be a Christian without believing in truth, big T. But there are very few things that are big T truth. And a lot of the other stuff has to do with policies and decisions and personalities and, who you listen to and all of that. So I think if we practice the discipline of not having the last word and keep asking questions and asking the why, as Nick said, that's so good to say, why do you think that? The race conversation, that same rules apply. Keep asking why, asking the personal questions. If they come from the South, they have a very different perspective on race than if they come from the West or East Coast. If they're older, they're going to have a different perspective and experiences, because they actually experienced segregation early on than someone who's a 20-year-old. There's so much we can learn, and I think if we keep that posture. And so I've been encouraging very strongly our leaders to not get sucked in to just parroting whatever they're hearing on their media of choice, but rather focusing on, okay, what is it going to look like for us to be still united in Christ in the big T things, and let go of the other stuff, and not try to win anyone over, but just try to love each other. And really, at some point, in one of the 10 commandments that we put out was, have a sign for timeout, where you kind of go, too heated. We have that in every sporting thing, right? I don't play sports, but I understand we have that. There's a flag on the field, court, something. So there's something that happens where we kind of go, this is getting out of hand. I'm getting really ratcheted up. We're not using the right tone with one another. Hey, let's take a time out. And that's really important, to give people permission to say, can we not talk about this anymore? Or can we talk about it offline? And so that it's a safe space. But at the end of it, whatever happens on November 3rd, I want our leaders and our groups to still love one another.
Carolyn, can you put those? I was going to ask Carolyn, can you put those 10 commandments on the Facebook group? I think a lot of people would appreciate seeing those.
We'll put them in the show notes.
So they need to be made pretty by our graphics team, and then yes, I'll be happy to post them.
Awesome.
And then you guys
can do the same. So.
Yeah, we'll get them out. We'll get them in the show notes. Carolyn, I love your warning flags. We in my staff meetings, I used to have people that would have yellow flags and red flags, or yellow cards and red cards for the soccer terminology. So, and then HR would finally jump in, when it was a super red flag. But just to have the last word, because now, Carolyn, you can't say anything because you practice not having the last word. So. It's killing her. If you're watching the video of this, she's dying right now. And so she's going, please let me have the last word. But she just cannot have the last word right now. So, but I think, just to kind of bring this question to a close, I think we realize that politics is never the answer. And no matter what church you're in, whatever side you want to fall on, you're going to offend 50% of your church. And in the analogy, if you're trying to go somewhere, if you're trying to row a boat, you need both oars in the water to be able to go in a straight direction. A bird needs both wings. We need each other. Both bring the beauty of it, of each other. And so it is part of that you've got to set some guidelines up. Also in the show notes, Peter Englert, did I pronounce that right? Does anybody know Peter's last name? Englert. He did a great job giving 5 succinct points. We'll put those in the show notes. We took the more lazier approach than Carolyn in creating our own 10 Commandments. You still can't respond on that. Because you the last word. No, last word. Shush. It was. But we just put, we sent his 5 to our small group leaders. They're going out in our October newsletter. So it's just one of those things where you've got to be sensitive. You've got to be bringing out those guidelines. And so love the fact that I think this is going to give all of our groups a great opportunity to dig a little deeper. Conflict resolution's never fun. Opinions are strong. People are very passionate about things, but we got to make sure they're passionate about Jesus and then more about politics. And like all of us, I can't wait for November 4th to be here in the United States more than anybody else on this planet.
Wow. Well, like I say, that was a very, very good, informative show. So thank you, Steve, Carolyn, Bill, and Nick for your time today. But before we sign off, I want to share one more quick announcement with everyone. The Small Group Network is storming out of COVID-19 with a slew of new strategic small group conferences slated for 2021. The locations include Houston, Portland, Las Vegas, Nashville, Denver, SoCal, New England, Ohio, Atlanta, and Virginia. And you still have time to lock in the super early bird or early bird prices on many of these events. So accelerate the health and growth of your small group ministry by attending one of our events in 2021. Just visit smallgroupnetwork.com/events. Again, that's smallgroupnetwork.com/events to lock in these great savings today.
Steve, are you going to be at all those events in person?
No.
Well, Steve, Carolyn, Bill, Nick, Jason, this was a blast. I love these Group Talk United shows with you. Again, thanks for your time. And to all of you Small Group Point people out there listening, thanks for giving us part of your day to join us and listen. And until next time, goodbye. Everyone have a great week.
All right, everybody. See you.
Good being with you.
And thank you for listening to Group Talk. We invite you to subscribe to our podcast through iTunes and get new episodes downloaded automatically. Also, if you enjoy this program, please take a few minutes to give us a positive rating on iTunes so that other Small Group Point people can find us more easily. We encourage you to visit our website at smallgroupnetwork.com to access our library of free resources, connect to a huddle with other small group ministry leaders in your area, read our blog articles, or join us on our Facebook group. Don't forget to use the hashtag SGNet when engaging with your social media channels. Thank you for your support.